because it is legitimate concerns that, you know, those who have jurisdiction in one area can't possibly have the same agreements in others. So
well, and that was her point, though, that different nations have to work through their own systems, right? That it's a really quite a pluralistic framework, that it wouldn't be one way of doing, for example, land, right, across nations.
you know, and it's hard though, because again, she's still working through a Canadian filter, the Canadian legal law system. So for example, technically the Blackfeet Nation south of the border and that, like, they should be recognized as their own nation. And yet now we're talking about, you know, international jurisdiction as determined by some white colonizers from Europe way back in whatever. And it's not okay. It's not okay that our people have to work around a Canadian jurisdiction when we just know what our lands are. So that's part of the problem, right? And like even today, I see on Twitter and Facebook, oh my God, I'm being oppressed. I'm so leaving Alberta. Blah. God forbid Jason Kenney put some restrictions on us as a public servant. And it's like, oh, welcome to the Native experience. And now while you have the luxury of running away to another land of opportunity, the Indigenous people of this land still have to fix your problems that you created, like land, abandoned wells, abandoned pipelines. You know, we're going to be stuck with the ramifications, the repercussions of that, whereas other people can just pick up and go somewhere else. It's not fair. It's not. And back to the governance, I mean, the city of Calgary just recently agreed to expansion. Well, I'm sure they didn't negotiate that with the Treaty 7 chiefs and just arbitrarily decided that they were going to, you know, expand their colonial ideals. And then I heard today that Alison Redford and a team here from Alberta with oil and gas experience are going to go to a whole other country to help them with their energy exploitation. And unfortunately, it's being led by like an Indian lawyer who, I don't know if he has any anti-colonial, anti-oppressive lens, but clearly is okay with the exploitation of energy resourcement on those Indigenous people from where they're from, right? So it's just so complicated. And yet when I'm talking about that bigger picture of reconciliation, people don't know what I'm talking about. When I'm talking about UNDRIP globally, they don't know what I'm talking about. And it's so infuriating that as Indigenous people, we have to know international laws, we have to know UN laws, we have to know, you know, federal, provincial, municipal, community associations, all of these different laws, knowing full well that, you know, it's not implemented equally at any point in time, right? So it's really, it's hard for me to agree with her on all of this because ultimately she's still working within a Canadian framework. And I mean, even if we modify the Canadian framework enough so that there is some sort of equality, I don't know if that would be enough, because ultimately, you know, that's allowing somebody else to determine, you know, jurisdictional issues that should never be anybody's but Indigenous jurisdiction, actually. Honestly, what should be happening is Canadians and Americans should be adapting to our laws and our customs and our governance. And that was our intention, was to allow people to live here with us with that assumption. But instead, they broke treaty. So that's kind of where we're at. Do you guys want to talk about that before I keep going, or? I guess maybe I'll just finish this part here of in the next part, the framework agreement on First Nation land management was the first time in Canadian history that First Nations from across the country came together as a group to develop, negotiate, and sign a government-to-government arrangement with Canada with respect to land management. In 1992, there were 14 chiefs from across Canada searching for a way to take control of their reserve lands and resources. In 1996, they negotiated and signed the framework agreement within Canada. In 1999, Parliament passed the First Nation Land Management Act, ratifying Canadians' commitment to the framework agreement. So, like, we're talking multi-generational, or I guess, you know, in Canada's ways, there's like 4-year term limits. But I mean, this is decades of having this conversation, right? And I just, you know, it's that bigger picture that Canadian jurisdiction just shouldn't apply in a lot of this. And we really try to do the best we can of negotiating with them despite that. So kind of going back through 125, the Landholding Transition Act for One Nation provides another model of how, under its full jurisdiction over land accordance and its modern treaty, the nation has been able to make independent decisions with respect to these types of land interests as it responds to local economic realities. So, like, she was talking very extensively about this because, one, she's a lawyer from that area, but two, they didn't have numbered treaties in BC. So it's a lot easier with modern day treaties to negotiate more rights than there are with the older ones, right? And yeah, I think everyone knows. So this is where the Delgamuukw decision comes in. It provided judicial affirmation of Aboriginal title by the country's highest court. The court said that the Aboriginal title exists before and exists after the assertion of sovereignty by colonial authority, and important to this discussion is a collective right held by all members of a First Nation. It was made clear in Delgamuukw that the lands held pursuant to Aboriginal title cannot be used in a manner that is irreconcilable with the nature of the group's attachment to those lands. And now this is literally what we're seeing today. Like, tomorrow is the Guffison Lake anniversary from 1995. And this court decision that was done in 97, we're seeing the repercussions of today, where we've had RCMP invading twice. And as of today, they're being like harassed daily by the RCMP and the man camps that are there establishing this pipeline. And on top of that, now that they have this conservative right wing protest coming up to their lands and ripping down the red dresses and just overall harassment in a general form at the tiny houses right now. So, you know, they talk about rule of law. If we were literally talking about rule of law, this pipeline would not be going through. But here we are. So I don't know if anybody wants to chime in.
It's typical colonialism, isn't it? It delay, deny, and, you know, drag things out for years and years and years until people get tired, and then the next generation has to, you know, pick up it's so unfair and stupid and infuriating, and that's my 2 cents.
Yeah. We can't forget that the impetus behind the colonial project was the exploitation of land and resources. That hasn't changed, right? That was why it began, and that still runs through attitudes, actions, policies, and all the rest. I'm not defending it. I'm just saying we just need to keep challenging it.
Well, that's what our government, our elected government, the government we have elected, has done again. Is the Supreme Court has said that the Wet'suwet'en have full rights to their land in general. And they said that, like, back, when was it, in 97 or whatever. And so they were saying, well, we have our paperwork saying so, because they were the first generation that were actually allowed to appeal in our colonialist courts. And they got the right to their land. And then they're like, well, that's a very good theory. Now let's build a pipeline, because pipelines are exceptional.
Exactly.
And so Supreme Court is theory or something, and pipelines are pipelines. So, yeah, we don't know what we got till it's gone. And then the people in Ontario are just up against the wall. So I watched a documentary on what's going down in Ontario there at Six Nations, and it's just horrific. And they're just getting squeezed into a little corner still, you know, and they have their treaty that on Grand River that has been dishonored time and again. And they said, we don't even want like the whole Grand River. We just want compensation for what the heck you've done, and fair compensation that, maybe, I don't know if they even took someone out and got one person to agree to it, just like they did with this one. So we'll get someone to agree to it, and split and all the rest of it. But, so, I mean, my tangent was I wrote a horrible letter to Trudeau. It was a real rant in the end, because you can't write him a letter. You have to go on his form, on the MP form. And so I wrote this rant, and I said, why didn't you listen to Jody while you had her? And rant. And now you've got the RCMP still doing your work when it's your work. You should be figuring this out, not just sending RCMP and rubber bullets after again and again. RCMP and rubber bullets isn't where it's at. It's your job to be doing all of this and to fix this. And that was my rant. So.
Good rant.
Hey.
Crystal, did you want to chime in? I see you unmuted there.
Yeah, I've just been unmuted for a while on this topic. Yeah, it's just, with the way that we've structured things to have this adversarial way of electing people to run the country, and then having like relatively short-term thinking with only 4 years at a time, you have to make any changes. Like I was talking to a friend of mine from India and just saying, like, people from India or from China, they're used to thinking, those countries are used to thinking long-term. Japan, that's how they do. And because of the way colonialism is, it's always short-term thinking. Just get the next resource. Don't worry about if it runs out, or if like you kill off all the bison, or, right? You just keep using it until it's gone. And yeah, I remember going up to the ledge in Edmonton there, and you see even the way they sit is like a panel against another side, right? One side against another side. And what I thought is, well, how about just try and sit in a circle like we do in school with kids? And like, how about start with a circle? And then maybe we could have some like, conversations instead of just debating back and forth and like gotcha moments that don't really convince either side of anything, right? Like, yeah. It's so, yeah.
I really encourage everyone, and I'm sure you can see it virtually online, but to look at the Northwest Territories legislature. I've actually been up there, and I took a ton of pictures, and it is in a circle to start with. There's a beautiful polar bear skin that's in the middle of it, and everybody's an independent. Like, you can't be a liberal or an NDP or a conservative. You're just an independent as it goes. Now, that said, there's still not nearly the Indigenous representation I'd like to see, but it regardless, at least they have a better system already. I mean, to me, that was such an easy win, especially when, Harper went to Ottawa with a majority talking about Senate reform and did nothing for that. I mean, I bet you in my entire life growing up here in Alberta, I've heard about, the need for Senate reform, and yet Harper didn't do that. So I thought, when we promised electoral reform, that would be an easy win. And I told them, rather than just break this promise, do like one little thing that would make it easier, so that you can say that you kind of kept it. We wanted to do first past the post, and I know they blame the NDP on that, and it just is what it is. We just broke that promise. And it's like, what you did for Senate reform and third party status easily could have translated to some sort of democratic reform that could have been so much easier, even if it was just, having stupid in-sessions, Zoom, or I guess webinars, or however you word it. It could have been so easy to keep that promise in some capacity. So I was really disappointed about that, but love your point that, real governance should be long-term thinking. And, Romeo Dallaire, I went to one of his speeches, and he talked about China having a 50-year goal, and that we never think that long here, and that we should be, and that he said we should have a 200-year goal. And I told him then that, this is that 7 generations conversation that our our people speak about, that we need to be thinking bigger and going from there. And and again, Jody speaks so about this being nonpartisan, but if we could get these people to see, there should be a 200-year goal. When we had the Canada 150, we talked about what does the next 150 look like. And, I was saddened to not see like official releases by, MPs or even just by any leader whatsoever about what 150 years now could look like, considering the gravity of trying to work on, a Canadian legal framework of Indigenous equality. Like, it could have been so much bigger. So.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
That underlines the point that Jody makes, that if we took the recognition of rights seriously, and reconciliation is the implementation of those rights, and self-determination and governance, the rest of Canada would benefit too. There'd be models for us to follow, right? That would change the nature of how we do things, that would benefit all of us.
Agreed. Larry, I was kind of thinking of the picture I have of us was prior to Heather. So if you wouldn't mind unmuting or putting your video on, and then I'll take another picture of us all if you're all good with that. And so I'll have everybody look in the screen and smile. Okay, 3, 2, 1. Okay, I got it. Awesome. I don't know, Larry, out of everything you heard, do you feel inspired to read this book?
Well, I could look at it from if I had another 72 hours in a day, maybe I'd look at it. I have a stack of books that I haven't got to for many years, and it's just
fair.
As much as I'd like to, it's usually my book reading happens on airplanes, and when I don't have Wi-Fi, when I'm not connected, and so on and so forth. So certainly would like to listen to her speak more often, as some of the folks have mentioned here, to hear some of her speeches on video and such. And who knows, maybe I'll get a chance and fly into Vancouver and take my son to a rally or something. But
how cool would it be though for him to make an appointment and you be able to go there with her and just get a picture or something? That would be amazing.
Here's the funny thing. For about a week, I said to him, like, this is a great opportunity. Like, he's door knocked with me. He's door knocked with so many people. He's door knocked with Kent, as you know, like, and so she would know Kent, and like he had a great opportunity to just walk into her office and say, hey, even just for a day, to door knock. He just wouldn't do it. He just, he was 19 at the time.
I know, that's so cool though. I'm really happy that he got to vote for her. For me, it would have been such an honor to do that. I don't know if you know who Harlan Pruden is, but he's a Two-Spirit leader, and he founded Two-Spirit Journal. And he came here and he taught voices a bit about media relations and such. And he purposely moved to her riding so that he could vote for her.
Yeah.
Great.
That's tremendous.
That's commitment.
I'd love to say the same, but it was a cheap apartment as to why he lived in the neighborhood he was in.
Good enough reason for me, let me tell you. Right on. Kat, did you want to chime in at all?
Yeah, I just wanted to say huge respect and amazement and honor to you, Michelle and Larry, for running for political office. That is, I think, takes a special and certain kind of person who takes their activism a lot further and more concrete than most folks do. So yeah, huge respect to you too for doing that, even just trying it, and just putting your name out there and talking to people, and that's really great. I'm not brave enough to do it, but thank you for doing it for us.
Let me tell you, and I think Michelle will probably agree. I learned more about myself and learned more about my neighbors. Um, I was the president of the community association here in Crossroads, and I thought I knew everybody. And turns out that 10 doors to my left and 10 doors to my right, I might have known one couple. There's a lot of folks you don't see, you don't run into them at the grocery store, you don't, or you just, you may run into them, but you don't really see them, right? And so it was a great learning experience, and I don't feel like I don't feel like losing was something I thought, oh, I never should have done that in the first place, because there was so many valuable lessons in it. So if you don't want to ever put your name on the ballot, I'd encourage you to find a candidate you like, even if it's not in your area, and go door knocking, even just one time, right? Even just one time, it's a valuable experience.
Yeah, that's awesome. When I was door knocking, both times I was door knocking, Larry was one of the first candidates I ever met that had a magnet, and he would attach it to the mailboxes. So when I was actually door knocking, I came across his magnet many times by people who never removed it.
I still have half a box.
That's how I met Michelle. That was how I met Michelle. Was we had a incumbent city councilor, and I'm pretty certain that the neighborhood hadn't changed that much. So I went down the list and picked another woman to help out. And so that was how me and Bella met Michelle, was door knocking.
I'm so lucky.
Oh, you want to come to my book club?
And there you go. And that's how that started. Like for Larry, he was, I was really lucky when I ran too, because I had all these mentors surrounding me by people who had ran. So I actually kind of was the odd person out to not have ran once. And then and the person that we kind of all work with at the BRZ there, I mean, I've encouraged her to run so many times, and I know like she's friends with all the politicians and they've all encouraged her to run. And I was just on Twitter and I seen Jody Lalonde. She's a feminist. She actually taught at the Liberal Convention a sexual harassment conversation. And that was where the RCMP like totally pushed me out of the way, because Justin was apparently behind me. And I'm like the only visible native, and they pushed me. I'm like, thanks guys. And here we are, let's talk about sexual harassment. And she was the keynote speaker. She was the one that was doing that teaching. And it was really like, Kent was right there. Justin was right there. And the reporters were not allowed in the room. And I'm not kidding, the doors open and the reporters were right on Justin and Kent Hare with microphones in their face, asking them, now that what are you going to do about Kent Hare? Because that was when that scandal kind of first came out. And I felt like watching a whole scandal for the first time from start to finish with somebody who isn't that type of person, not to me. And I'm the person who believes in the victim. You always believe the victim first. But then I found out more and more about this victim, and I found out she was a conservative hack, and I found out she was on some podcast saying, I can't believe how easy it was to take down a conservative or a cabinet minister. And, and then she falsely accused Warren Kinsella of hitting his wife, and he countersued her. She had to put out a statement. So I have that woman blocked on Twitter, and I would never spend 5 minutes with her, because I know so many women who will never report, never have a person believe them, never have an opportunity to have justice in any capacity. How many families affected by missing or murdered Indigenous women? And I just felt like nobody wants to talk about the inherent sexism and racism that's in politics in our society. But then, of course, when I ran like an idiot, I'm like, hey, I'm experiencing racism and sexism. And I mean, I knew it and I was going to expect it. And I experienced that daily anyway. And I recently put out a piece actually through Madam Premier on running with regrets. And what it was well-meaning people in your life who are like, you should run. But when push comes to shove, they don't show up to donate. They don't show up to volunteer. They don't endorse. And on the opposite, they say, oh, I don't want to upset, one of your people that you're running against, just in case. And it's like,
and there's the lesson.
yes.
There's the lesson.
So just because people tell you to run,
That's
unless they're
ridiculous,
willing
yeah.
to put their money and time and endorsement and their name behind you, it's just a nice compliment, really, especially if you're political. And in our circle, all the people here are very political. So I wrote that piece because we have all these new Black Lives Matter activists, and it almost irks me to see all of these so-called mutual friends of mine encouraging them to run when they won't put their name out there. They won't endorse those people. They won't volunteer with them. And they're expecting these young activists to do this work and get hurt the way they're going to get hurt and not get supported when they should. It really bothered me. It really hurt me too, actually, to see the same people who encouraged me say the same things to them. So that's why I put out that piece. So I encourage you to read it. And thanks again for those kind words, Kat. And thank you, Larry, for being one of those people that really did always encourage me. Oh, and I wanted to mention that Kent Hare was also one of those people. 2 days before the first election, when I was running municipally, he called me and he said, I know you feel really alone right now, Michelle, but hang in there. This is one of the most interesting moments. And then when I lost, he was one of the first people to call. He is a good man and was good to me. And I'm to this day upset that he got smeared and forced out of politics the way he did.
Yeah. And we'd have the Olympics.
Right? I know we'd have the Olympics. Well, it looks like we only have like 3 minutes left. So unless somebody has something really pressing they want to say, I just want to say thank you all for being here again and making a time. I can't tell you all how enriching it is to me and my soul to be able to talk about these things with people who get it, who want to talk about bigger pictures of what, human rights and equality is for Indigenous Canadian relations, for that bigger picture of everything. So I hope you all know how enriching it is for me to have these conversations with you. And from the bottom of my heart, I say thank you.
Well, thank you for organizing this.
Back at you, Michelle.
Yeah.
It's so important. I've learned so much. I feel I can catch a news clip from Ontario and see stuff that's going down in the middle of the street there and understand what's going on now a little bit more than I certainly could before. So it's so important that to get that knowledge.
Oh, that makes me happy. I don't know if you all can see the Zoom chat, but the picture I took, I uploaded of all of us so that way you can all have a copy if you miss it on social media. I'm sure Larry and I will, push it out there. Once I have these videos downloaded, I'll put them up. And I extend this to everybody, and it's happened once before where I recorded our book club, and then somebody said later, I'd prefer if you took it down. So we did. And I open that up to all of you if you don't feel comfortable right now voicing that, to contact me afterwards, and I will likely not put it up if you're uncomfortable at any point. And yeah, have a good break. I don't know what this next month is going to look like for all of us. For those who don't know, Larry's actually also with the Phoenix Foundation, a homeschool organization. So, and I've been seeing quotes from Phoenix. You guys are tapped out.
Darn it. I just froze when you were talking. All I heard was Larry Phoenix Foundation, and then I timed out. Anyway, it is, if you're asking me about what's happening opening school wise, it's everybody you walk in, and I'm going to be walking in tomorrow morning, and we're still going to be like 80% sure of how it's going to look when the doors open. I mean, we've got it set up and we've done all kinds of things and spent all kinds of money. There's going to be new sinks put in, the whole bit. And none of us have the confidence that it's not going to change 27 times before we actually open school.
Exactly.
And you know, part of it is great in that you see that people are resilient, they can handle change, they understand that everybody's doing their best and trying hard, but there's also, you know, a lot of underlying frustrations. And I think once we get, you know, the kids in the school and all do our best and get things started, that'll all kind of calm down a little bit, one would hope.
Michelle, are we doing the next section in the calls to action, the one after youth?
That's right.
Okay.
67. Yeah.
Okay.
So that'll be our homework. And yeah, I don't know if I'm going to find someone nearly as cool to talk about that, but maybe I will.
Okay, let us know.
Right.
All right.
Thank you so much.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
well, and I encourage everybody to go to Cat's Book Club next week if you can, because I can't wait for that conversation.
Yay.
Yeah, and I also, I guess, too, by bringing up the next month, this next month, I thought the last few months were tough. I know a lot of you are teachers or part of the public and having to deal with kids reopening, and my hearts and, you know, thoughts and prayers are with you all.
Thanks.
Yeah. All right. See you guys.
Okay, see
Yeah.
you.
Take care.
Bye.
Love.
See you next week.
Go.
Keep well.
Okay. Bye.
Check your messenger.
Yes, sir.